Hello.
Hey, how's it going, Coach?
Good. Hey, Ronnie Harrison joining us today. He's a former Benson coach, former Portland State coach, and now University of Oklahoma.
Cool.
Also, great saxophone player.
Nice. Yeah, it's hard to remember sometimes that we're more than just athletes.
Yes.
You know, we're not unidimensional.
I dare to say, is running hard? Yes. Yes, Ronnie. I think running is hard, and I think that's all we need to say about that.
Yeah.
I'd go out on a limb and say that I bet Coach Harrison's love for the saxophone is probably even a little bit more than his love for riding, training, and running, and he nerds out pretty hard on the running stuff. So I know he loves his saxophone. So
yeah.
Well, miss seeing you around, Ronnie. Oh, being married. Is being married hard?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Is it?
I don't know. I've had 4 years of that, and Jeff is on hiatus right now, or on hold.
Yeah.
So
Paused. I mean, it's just a longer engagement than I had wanted, but that's sometimes what you get.
Yeah. He loves his horn more. All right. Well, Ronnie, I don't know if you ever knew this about me, but I was also a saxophone player.
Ooh.
I started on the alto and ended up on the Barry sax. Whether it's because I had great lungs and I could really blow the Barry loud and carry the jazz band that way, or whether it was because the alto was way too intricate and hard and I just got the low bass line beat. We can leave that for the experts to to debate.
Yeah.
So, all right, Ronnie. I think I just took a step up in your world.
Yeah.
So, well, today we're going to talk about our chat with Danny Lopez, and
Yep.
He was a 1992 Olympian in the steeplechase, and we had a good chat with him. He spent a lot of time just talking about his journey and just learning more about him. And I mean, 92 Olympians are even earlier than when I was a fan of the sport yet. So it was cool just hearing his story, and he's now with Adidas. He's basically one of the head guys as far as Adidas goes in the world of running and track and field. So now he's kind of helping others. But the topics I wanted to chat about that relate to him and what he talked to when he was talking with our team were just some of the pursuits of greatness. And he started running as a way to get out. He wanted to be in the military. He wanted to get out of his town. He was blind in one eye, so that kind of precluded him from being in the military. So he went to running, and the only way out of his town was, to get an education. But he said he never applied himself the way he wanted, the way he could have educationally. And so running was his ticket, and he was not good enough to get a big scholarship to a university out of high school. So he was a 420 miler. He's still pretty good. State runner-up in Arizona. But he went to a junior college, and kind of from that point on, it sounds like his life kind of kicked into a hyper focus. George Young was his coach there in Arizona, and George Young was America's first 4-time Olympian, silver medalist, famous for some of his battles with Pre. That's how probably my generation knows George Young is.
Yep.
He was in those movies with Pre.
Mm-hmm.
Really, Pre was in the movies with him. George was quite known. So,
Yeah.
but you know, he just he kept talking about how he kept using running as like that drive and that motivation to get that next thing in life, whether it was to get the education, whether it was to then chase the Olympic dream. And so I just wanted to chat kind of about extreme motivation.
Yeah. I remember that standing out as well. That, like, I think one of the things I wrote down was that at one point, he was working 3 different jobs. I think it was when he was in college already at the University of Oregon.
I think that was after college. It was as he got his first contract. Mizuno
Sure.
gave him just gear,
Yeah.
and so he worked at Sport Hill, at a gas station, and at a market or something. Like, he worked. That was his professional life.
Yeah. And, the thing that stood out to me about that is just how hard he worked and how much he fought for what he wanted. Um, you know, and also, kind of like you said, I mean, that's a little bit different than what you said. It's kind of taking the track of school and kind of riding up, which I think a lot of us, and I think you can relate to that. I know I can. I think, I started running probably just after he quit running. But I remember as a kid thinking and being told by parents and coaches, like, running is what's going to get you, it's either going to get you into college, like pay for college, or it's going to get you into a better college. And that's kind of exactly what happened for me. And I can also relate to kind of that 3 jobs part, because after college, I was like, I wanted to do the same thing. I was right on the edge of US championships, and I was thinking, like, okay, cool, how do I do this? And I remember emailing Spira and like some of these smaller companies saying, like, hey, do you think you could even hook me up with a free pair of shoes, one free pair of shoes? And I was working a full-time job and looking at like another part-time job, and then trying to get free gear, coaching, volunteer coaching, and trying to make it work. But I think I ended up giving up on it in a way that he did not. And I was just like, man, this guy is so cool. He did everything. Like, it was, you're the person I want to be, is what stood out to me, And I think I told you afterwards, I was like, man, I just want to like hang out with that guy. He's so cool. And so, that still stands. And if he hears this, I'd just be like, hey, Danny, just don't lose track of me. I'll meet up for lunch once this all pandemic is over, or whatever. We can hang out. I'd be happy to do that.
Yeah.
So,
I think the difference, I can't speak to you, but the difference in what it sounds like and what he just knew he wanted to make the Olympic team. Like, that was such a driving force for him.
right.
It became his goal. He didn't really talk about when it became his goal. He didn't ever really hint that it was a lifelong goal, or but at some point he had made that decision, and then committed himself to that decision. And even he said 91 was a really bad year for him, and he wasn't even expected to make the final in 92 at the Olympic trials.
Yeah.
And from there, he said this was when the Olympic trials had three rounds, and he ran the first round pretty easily. Second round, got into finals, and even before the trials, he said he was labeled as a dark horse to even make the finals. But he had mentioned to his coach that I know I'm making the finals and I know I'm making the Olympic team. Which, just that commitment to and belief in yourself, to see something through, is pretty important.
Yeah. The thing that stood out to me about it was, I can also relate a little bit to that too. I shared that with our senior this year, who made it to nationals and then didn't have the race that he wanted at nationals. Because when I was a senior in college, my goal was also I'm gonna make it to nationals, because I had never made it to nationals, and then I didn't make it out of the first round because I was done, because I had already accomplished what I set out to do. And I 100% looking back on it see that now. And then I saw Sean kind of recreate that a little bit this year, or last cross-country season. And in Danny's story, I heard the same thing. It was, when the goal is to just make it here, it's pretty hard to go here, to make it one more leap. You have to kind of, it's what do they say? You run through the line,
Not to it.
Not to the line, you run through the line, which one of our current teammates, or our team members, who's from Minnesota, should take note of that. I think you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah. And not slam on the brakes when you get to the
line. Run through the line, just a couple meters. You don't just stop immediately after the line.
Yeah, he said he made the Olympic Games, and then he actually felt like, he would have had a shot at making the final. I don't know how many rounds were at the Olympics. I would presume probably about 3 again. U.S. championships usually mimic what the Olympics do.
Right.
But he said once he got there, that was his goal, and he wished he would have had, the goal of making finals, because once he got to the Olympics, he just was present, but that was about it.
Yeah. On the topic of the goal, I mean, to say that you want to make the Olympics, I mean, that's a lofty goal for most people. I think, but it's, in reality, I think as long as you have a little bit of talent, like some general proficiency in whatever it is you're choosing to do, and you have a willingness to work hard, which I think that's exactly how Danny might describe himself. That you can accomplish even really difficult goals. I think if you focus enough time and energy into anything, you should be able to at least get close to whatever it is that you decide that you want to do. And you said it about Danny, that he decided he wanted to make the Olympics, and he just went out and made it happen. That's not to say that it's, like that, but it's years of training to do it.
Yeah. And I think it's just important to, have the faith and commit to what you're doing, and, putting yourself in the position to have a shot at the goal. And, I think those people are the ones who probably are the ones that don't ever have regrets, whether they accomplish the goal or not. They're at least the ones who, knew that they actually committed to something, and knew they actually gave, a worthwhile effort to doing it. And, going to that thought of him making the Olympics, but, not competing there, not being competitive there. I think that's a good lesson in once you have like a goal set, a destination set, you have to know what that next step is. What am I going to do once I get there? No matter what it is, I want to go into the final having a B in the class. You know, I need to go into the final having this grade. You know, well, what are you going to do on the final once you get there? You know, I want to, I will qualify for the conference meet. I want to qualify for nationals. I want to, you know, I want to be in the fast heat at this meet. What are you going to do once you get there? And, you know, that's, you've got to have an idea of what you are going to do once you get there, but then it's got to be something that's meaningful to you also. You know, getting to the Olympics might be the goal for some, you know, and but the purpose of getting there is to then be able to compete. You know, it doesn't mean that once you've decided your goal is making the Olympics that you then have to have the goal of, well, I want to be a gold medalist. You know, you still have to keep your dreams and your reality in check, but you've got to know what you're going to do once you get there. I want to get to the Grand Canyon. Like, okay, you can do that. What are you going to do once you get there?
Right.
Why do you want to be there? What's your purpose there?
To be honest, I'm actually thinking about something that was a Grant, last week, or someone, I can't remember. Someone who someone was quoting Shalane Flanagan about the ABC goals. And what you're talking about to me sounds
Curtis.
like
Curtis Beach.
Oh, it's Curtis. Yeah. Okay. And what you're talking about is
spoiler next week, Grant Holloway.
Yeah, sorry, I gave it away too early. But what I hear in that is that making the Olympics should be your C goal, and then B is I want to make the finals, and A is I want to medal.
Yeah.
You know, and then after that, and also even okay, so that's one goal, but then you also kind of always have to have an idea of what is next. You know, even after this Olympics, like, do I have a shot at next Olympics or the World Championships? You know, kind of keeping it's a tough balance really to be fully present in this goal, but also to be aware of that other goal that's next. You know, like I want to. You know, I want to place in the top 10 at conference this year in cross country, and I still want to have a good indoor season. And I want to be able to be competitive in track in the spring, outdoor track. You know, like that's kind of the way you have to think about it. There's got to be something else on the other end.
Yeah, you've got to know what. For lack of a better term, what selling out for this goal will mean relative to your other goals as well. You know, using the cross country indoor outdoor as a great example. You know, we've talked with our team a lot about, and this year and many other teams in the past about you can't sell out your longer term goals for short term success. You know, right now, we've had a few talks with our team about this fall and how it might look a little different early in the year, and how there's uncertainty about what qualifying, you know, for nationals might look like, if there will be a national meet. You know, our conference meet is still committed to, you know, to moving forward at this point. So, you know, that's kind of our number one goal as a team anyway, is that conference meet first. But instead of needing to be quote unquote ready a little bit earlier in the year to try and get some, you know, regional points or some national level points, you know, we can be a little bit more patient and plan for the longer term, and, you know, really keep focused on the fact that conference is our bigger goal. And we might be a little bit more patient in the summer, you know, which is probably what we should do anyway. But we always get sped up a little bit thinking about, well, we might need to be we need to build some confidence by being fast here. We need to get some points by being fast here. When really it is that that conference and those regional meets that are the most important and what you should build for anyway. And then you can't sell out emotionally or physically to those as end all be alls of defining you, because then you're probably setting yourself up to have a tougher comeback for running well during the indoor and outdoor season. You know, creating bigger challenges for yourself. I think that's what both Nick Willis and Jenny Simpson had mentioned, that, you know, plan for the long term and the short term starts taking care of itself.
Yeah.
But you've got to know the, you know, we've taken this a little different direction, but we got to know what the long-term implications of any short-term decision are. And if the short-term decision is, I want to qualify for the Olympics, what's the long-term implication of that? Well, you're going to be at the Olympics. So
Yeah.
what are you going to do once there? You might have your ABC goals at, you know, throughout the season. My A goal is I qualify for the Olympics. My B goal is, you know, I get into the finals at nationals, and, you know, this is, you know, I run a good race, and my C goal is I make it to the final at nationals. But once you know, if one of those goals then sets another goal for you, you know, high schoolers, it happens all the time with either like, I really just want to make it to state, and then they crap out at state, or the ones who like don't, either their season ends at district or at state, and it didn't end the way they wanted, and all of a sudden they're like, well, I want to do this post season meet now. I want to run Foot Locker or NXN, or I want to do you know, summer track meets, you know, and those notoriously go bad because people didn't have the longer term, you know, thought there.
Yeah. You mentioning high school just makes me think about my high school experience, which I know I've shared with you because you know my high school coach. He had the long-term approach for us, for all of us. He said, I want you to be able to run in college and beyond. So he never pushed us too much in training, and it came out in that I never ran well at Border Clash, because it was after the state meet. Everything was focused on the state meet, and then that was it. We also never did Foot Locker or anything beyond that, because he felt that was too intense of a burn, so to speak. Like, if you have a set amount of fuel, you're just not going to have it. Like, if you spend it all in high school, you're not going to have it in college. Or if you spend it all in college, you're not going to have it in, like, after college. Which, maybe this is, you know, maybe it's a circular logic, kind of. But I see that in myself, you know. In my story was, I saved it in high school, I did really well in college, and then maybe I kind of overspent it after college. And then, you know, I ended up kind of crashing. So, you know, I think, and I do think that to some degree, Danny's story was very much the progressive build-up that we want, except for just making the Olympics. He didn't have anything beyond that.
Yeah.
You know, if he had just had one more step, you know, one more goal, then maybe it could have gone differently for him.
Yeah, and he said basically once he made the Olympic, he didn't say this on our call, he said it when I chatted with him earlier. He said it more directly when I chatted with him prior to our call, when I was trying to prep for our call. He talked about once he'd made the Olympics, you know, he knew he didn't like want to make the next Olympics, which in hindsight is kind of weird because the next one's in Atlanta, it's in the US, and you know, if there's ever an Olympics to try and make, it's your home one. But he talked about how the next 4 years were basically just not part of his plan, and he had accomplished what he wanted to accomplish, and at that point, kind of the love was out of it for him, and he didn't have that excitement or passion for it anymore. So it didn't matter to him, and it didn't. Even though his career kind of ended with an injury, and then he was, I don't remember if he like didn't get to run the Olympic trials that, or how it exactly ended, but he said he was okay with it. Most people would be like, "Wow, really frustrating. You ended with an injury, and didn't get to go out how you wanted to," but he did, even though it was like 3 years later or 4 years later. He went out how he wanted to because he had already accomplished his goals.
Right.
Which, again, maybe that was his last goal. I mean, he talked about wanting, maybe I should have tried to make the final. Maybe I should have, been aware of that. But maybe one Olympics was what he wanted. Maybe that was good for him. So,
yeah.
The other thing he mentioned, this might be, unless we hit a tangent again, this might be the last thing we talk about, but it's always intrigued me because I know I've been on the spectrum of this scale of arrogance to confidence. I've been largely accused of being on the negative, the arrogance side of it.
Sure.
But I've always viewed it as confidence, and I've in no way equating my abilities to Danny and or the Michael Jordan documentary, or just any of these like Olympic level or super elites. But I relate to them, and that's how my mind works. And I think the extreme confidence you have to have will be perceived by others who are threatened. I think I guess how I would put it is, if you believe so strongly in what you're doing, it's confidence. And if you're just mouthing off about it and not actually willing to try and do the things necessary to back it up, that's probably arrogance. What are your thoughts on
the
difference between the two, and the importance of having a confidence so high that it might be viewed as arrogance?
I mean, I think you touched on one element. Often arrogance is about expression of it and how you express your confidence. But I think more than anything, it's not, I think you're right that some people will label behavior as arrogance if they are threatened by it. But maybe more than anything, I think it comes from a lack of understanding or knowledge, or maybe ignorance about all the facts. To use you as the example, as someone who's worked with you now for the last couple seasons now, I think a lot of people who would label your ability as arrogance would do so mostly because they don't really know that you know that what you're saying you can or will accomplish is backed up by, I've looked at this, I've considered that, I know that I've put in the work, I know that this is the range of possibilities, and I'm saying, maybe I'm being a little bit hopeful in saying that I can accomplish this. But it's more that they just don't know that because they haven't put in the thought, or they don't have enough knowledge to know that that's real for you. I think back to one, as a freshman in college, I went into our conference meet in the steeplechase saying, like, this is my race to lose, which I never should have framed it as it's my race to lose. because that's exactly what I did. But I knew I was the best runner in that race, and I should have won it. And to some people that would have been arrogant to say that. I never did verbalize that to anyone, but it was something I knew. You know, I had run, I wasn't even the fastest seed time coming in, but I knew that I could win that race. And I knew it because I had put in the year of work to get there. And I knew who else was there. I researched, you know, all the other competitors. I knew what I was doing. And that, to me, is the difference between arrogance and confidence is, do I know for a fact? And one of the things I wrote down when Danny was talking about this was, I think I said, it's confidence in your work ethic, that I can do what I need to do to beat everyone. That was my summary of what he was saying when he was describing his confidence. It was that he knew he could do the work that was required to accomplish, you know, whatever it was that he was setting out to accomplish.
Yeah, and again, people not knowing the frame or the context of it, you know, they might have seen Danny's, you know, whether he proclaimed it publicly or just to himself, you know, people might view that as arrogance, but they don't know that, you know, he overcame being blind in one eye and not being able to be in the military. He had to change his goal. He wanted to use running as a way out. He wanted to get an education with it, and all these things that built up to how hard he had to work to make these things happen are building someone else, you know, building your own confidence. And if somebody doesn't have the frame of reference for understanding all of that, then it does feel surface, you know, and they don't, might not appreciate all the things that you've done to be able to say what you want to say about what you want to accomplish.
Yeah.
You know, and I think it's, I think you also hit it there on being willing to do what's necessary to try and make that happen. And I know this can get you into, you know, rivalry situations, you know, pretty easily. And I remember when I was in Virginia coaching at Christopher Newport, one of our biggest rivals was Salisbury, and they had won the conference, I think, more than any other team in history. And York College was pretty good at the time too, and York had won a few in a row, and then Salisbury had, and we just joined the conference, and we finished second in our first 2 years in the conference, because we switched conferences, I think, my third year there. But we switched conferences, and we got second our first 2 years there. And then we won our third, and that fourth year I was there in that conference. Our team had made, let's see, we'd lost by about, the first 2 years we'd lost by a total of like 15 seconds worth of time. It was very, very close battles. And then our third year we won, but it wasn't so decisive. It was, you know, it wasn't a close victory, but it wasn't like we were untouchable. But then I remember going into our fourth year, some things that happened in the spring that I guess I'll state the arrogance before I back it up with the confidence here.
Sure.
But we said we were going to perfect score the conference, and that's the arrogant statement.
Sure.
But and the other team called us out on that. The other coach, who's a good friend now, but he called us out on that. You know, that don't just share your goals like that. Don't just pin up board material for our team. You know, don't say you have a lack of respect for the league. And I told him it's actually because of because of the respect we have for the league that we know how hard we have to work to do this.
Yeah.
But rewind to the spring before, and our team had, we'd been making big improvements, but one night I got a text from the guys on the team that said, you know, bring your $5 or you're not drinking tonight. And I said, that's unfortunate. And they wrote back, "Whoops, sorry, coach, wrong text thread." And we had a talk the next week about just whether they were happy and satisfied with the improvements they'd made, or whether they actually wanted to challenge themselves. And from that mistake and that meeting came one of our greatest refocusing ever in probably March or April. And from that point on, they did the work that summer. They spent the next 5 weeks before we got, or 5 months before we got back together, doing all the work and really preparing to take that next step, that next, not just get better, but literally level up. And so I was confident that they were on track to accomplish the goal. And so I felt it was confidence. I felt that's what we believed we could do. And I remember going into that meet. It was probably one of the better win one for the Gipper kind of speeches I'd given, the ones that people will talk about later. And I know the team has brought it up to me before, but or since. And I remember telling everybody on the team, because we could run unlimited numbers at that meet. So we had about 27 guys running, I think, that day. And I said, every single person on this team, you have to realize you have the target on your back, that if somebody beats one of you, if somebody outkicks one of you, they feel like they got a small victory against us. And I said, everybody here, you have to go out with the mindset that you cannot get beat. No matter where you are in the race, you have to battle, you have to win, and you have to try and crush someone else's soul. And I got a little fired up, within our huddle. But that next day, I remember two distinct things about the race. One of them was, it was like our 23rd or 24th man came up to me after the race and said he was sorry because he let one guy pass him, in the last half mile. And other than him, I think pretty much everyone else won all their battles position wise, except this other one. I'll say, our fifth man, we'd executed the race perfectly, and everything came down to our fifth man trying to beat the one guy from the other team. And they're coming down the home stretch, and he stepped in a little hole on a cross country course, and with 100 meters left, and it just threw his stride off enough that the other guy beat him, and by, I think it was less than a second. And so we got 16 points, not 15. But he, quick flashback, that guy was the defending, I believe he is like runner up in cross country the year before, and was the defending 1500 conference champion. So, we had effectively, had to level up and against a very, very good runner. And, I think those rivalries are, things that can really, really spur on, holding yourself accountable to how good you can be.
Yeah. I mean, obviously I don't know. On the confidence side, I was going to respond to this by saying, like, you knew exactly what it took to do that. So again, I don't know. I mean, I'm a pretty competitive person. I'm quietly competitive is the way I would describe it. I don't think anybody would ever accuse me of being arrogant in the same way that they would accuse you, only because you say it and I think it. I'm pretty disinclined to sharing those statements. But I would definitely be talking about it in our team meetings. I'd be saying, hey, do you guys think we can perfect score this? And I wouldn't ask that question if I didn't think it was a possibility, because I looking at the times and the scores and the stats from previous years and knowing that it's possible. My experience with that, my mind goes back to high school as well, where, my high school team, my freshman year of high school, we won the only Midwestern Conference championship in cross country that Sheldon ever won, because they discontinued the conference shortly thereafter. They did some restructuring, and it was the only one. And we were also up against a very good team. It was a weak year for South Eugene, and Churchill was also quite good. And we knew each other. Like, everybody knew each other on those teams. And we would actually...
Because dual meets happened.
Yeah, because dual meets happened. And so you knew every single person. And I'm pretty sure they beat us early in the year, and we knew exactly what it would take, and then we committed to doing it. And the arrogance, where arrogance would have come in, was the fact that our coach let us screen print championship T-shirts before the race was even over, which we did end up wearing on the podium, which I do think is in poor taste now. But at the same time, like, it wasn't really arrogance. It was confidence that we knew it was possible. We didn't know that everything would work out in our favor, much like your number 5 guy you can't anticipate a hole, Yeah. I mean, you can try, but sometimes stuff just happens. If one of our guys had gotten injured, rolls an ankle, we might not win.
Yeah.
But knowing that it's possible and being confident in that if I can do X, then this is what will happen. And I don't know. I mean, to me,
it's commitment to the controllables.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you're never in control of what, someone else is preparing to do. You're never in control of their confidence or arrogance.
Right.
You have to be fully committed to what is willing, like you've said a few times now, that what's willing or what's necessary to have these things happen.
Yeah.
And if you are willing to, if you're intelligent about the things you're thinking are possible, and you're willing to do whatever, is necessary to accomplish it,
yeah.
then it is just confidence. And, I think that's, it doesn't have to be vocal, like I do it. That's a little bit of my personality, and it's probably related to, I believe that's the best way for me to be held accountable, is for me personally. I want to put it out there, because then I don't have, because I'm a rationalizer. I can rationalize just about anything, and I can come up with reasons for anything.
Sure.
So if I put it out there, then I'm less able to rationalize it away. If I say, this is what I think we're going to do, and these are the things that make me believe we can do it, and I know how hard we have to work to get there,
right?
Then I think that's what helps keep me accountable personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and probably by contrast, I'm, as someone who doesn't verbalize their goals as much, I would say I'm probably better or more inclined to hold myself accountable internally. I don't need that external stick, so to speak, of like judgment from myself, or not from others, I guess. I will judge myself. Did I succeed or not?
Yeah.
And I don't know that one is better than the other. I think sometimes people get turned off by either extreme. I'm thinking about, someone like Michael Jordan. You brought up the documentary. I still have yet to see it. But I'm thinking about the meme, at least that I've seen, of, Michael put on 15 pounds to try and to combat the Pistons, their defense. And it's that, to me, is confidence. It's, I'm going to put in the work that is necessary to beat this team, to be dominant. And I mean, I think Michael was probably more like you in that he spoke out. He said his goals.
That is amazing to hear. I'm gonna frame that. I think Michael was like you.
Yeah. Or vice versa,
I get what you're saying.
But it's that, he said his goal. It's like, this is what I'm gonna do. Oftentimes he would say it to the defender who was standing right in front of him. And I think to some degree he was practicing like psychology to try and crush their spirit, but also I suspect that there was a part of it which was, I need this to be known so that I am held accountable. So I mean, I think that's how the greats get great, is by not letting themselves slack or rationalize, as you said, rationalize something away. That, I'm actually thinking about one of our friends, Harlan Wyarty, who's the camp director at Steens, and his speeches. I remember one in particular where he said something about dealing with adversity in a cross country race. It's rare that you run that it's 70 and sunny, and you, it's cold, it's windy, those are rationalizations that give you an excuse to not do your best.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think that was one of the things that Danny said was, I don't think he said it exactly, but it was, I think he knew he had done his best. And that's why he was able to walk away.
Yeah.
And not be haunted by that, because, if you explain away why you didn't achieve your goal, then you're always going to know that. In my previous life as a therapist, I would say to people, you can lie to me, that's fine, but you really shouldn't be lying to yourself.
Right.
Because you're the only person you have to live with forever. So.
Yeah, it's I think no matter what, how you manifest it, how you manifest your thoughts, whether it's more vocal or more internal, it all comes back to setting goals and them being meaningful to you. Like they have to have value to you, right, to really feel like you are going to do something to change yourself, to improve, to make, to try and accomplish things. It has to be meaningful to you for some reason, and then being willing, like the next step, and that's usually the easy part, is setting the goal is easy, and then trying to find the value of it is usually either hand in hand or right behind that. But then the most important factor is being willing to do whatever it takes to meet that goal. And it doesn't mean that everybody has to have that I want to win a national championship goal, and willing to make all the sacrifices, like all of them, when we talk next week about Grant Holloway, some of the things he touched on were, I'm willing to give this up because this is what I want.
Right.
And I remember talking with Chris Salisbury before, at another time, and he coached at William and Mary when I was at Christopher Newport, and so we were like 10 miles away from each other and saw each other a lot. And he came and talked to our team.
Yeah.
And one thing that he said was he he chose not to go to a couple weddings where he was asked to be in the weddings.
Yep.
Because it was interrupting his training or racing routine.
Yep.
And training and racing schedule. And so he knew what he wanted, and he knew what was required of him. And his was a more extreme example, but
sure.
But his goals were a little more extreme and required that. So I think that's set the goal, have a value to it. And that's kind of like the baseline for what you need to begin believing in the confidence, or having the confidence to believe in being able to accomplish it. But you really have to be willing to do what's necessary, do what's asked of you.
Sure. And I mean, we're talking about sports, but this applies to anything. I want to get into Harvard. Okay, well, you better get damn near straight A's and damn near perfect test scores and extracurriculars. And, this is just the way that it happens. Wishful thinking is not going to get you there. You have to put in the work. You have to do the research that it takes to find out what kinds of things you need to do to get there.
And that's, I guess maybe my my high school days, I wanted to get into Stanford, my middle school and high school days, and I wanted to get in there. And perhaps it was a little more arrogance at that time, because I didn't know exactly I didn't do all that research. We didn't have the internet and, the way it's used now. And so I didn't have all the resources, or maybe I was ignorant, I guess less than arrogant, but I was ignorant to exactly what it took. But I remember in middle school, I was getting mostly A's, a couple B's, and was very blasé about studying because learning came quick to me amongst my peers. And and I remember my mom's boyfriend at the time said, "You're never going to get into Stanford with that attitude." And he and I never saw eye to eye, to say the least. And
sure.
I just said, watch me, with the expletive in there. And I got 4 points from that point on, but I was willing to do what it took, or what I thought it took, to get there. Sure. And I think that's where, I guess, that's where the benefit of a coach comes in. Had I had a teacher, or a parent, or a mentor who might have known more directly what it took to get exactly into Stanford, maybe I would have had the chance to, but I did what I believed it took to get there, and the goal didn't pan out. So it's not that they always pan out, but you've got to do the best, do what you can with what you have where you are, is one of my favorite quotes. And you've got to set your goal, believe that it's meaningful to you, and then be willing to do what it takes to the best of your ability.
And I think you hit on something really important, which is, when you were trying to when you were setting that goal and working towards it, we didn't have the research capabilities that we do now. I think ignorance is no longer an excuse, because we have all the information necessary at our fingertips now. And,
there's always going to be slightly different levels of ignorance. I mean, no, the information is there. The ability to reach out and ask somebody is there. But, some things like experience, is not always there. And that's something that, Sean this last fall, went through. Is we had the experience, we'd been there, we understood, but we have to try and relate that to somebody without that experience. So, but it's, there are fewer excuses now. But if it is something that's really meaningful to you, you will commit yourself fully to finding the information.
I guess what I was saying with that is there's no reason not to at least do the research to find out for real what it really takes. There will be roadblocks, there will be reasons, that it just doesn't work out. But there's not a reason to not at least try and figure out how is it that I can get there? How is it that I can achieve my goal? Or do I need, through the process of research, you might find out that, hey, that goal is just not possible, and I need to reframe my goal into something else. I can't think of an example.
Reframe the timeline. I mean, that's usually a big one in college is, you come into college and you have no frame of reference for what it's actually like because you've competed at a whole different level before.
Right. Now
you're coming into this new place. And, if we have freshmen on the team that want to win the conference championship, you might have seen times, but, do you know what the weather was like on that meet? Do you know what this competitor is actually like? Do you know how that competitor's season was going? Was that competitor injured before? There's so many frames of reference that you can't fully understand. But maybe your goal is I want to win a conference championship, and after you are running your first year, you realize, okay, I have to reframe this, that I still can accomplish that goal, but my timeline needs to be X instead of Y.
Right.
And that's where, at the very beginning of our talk today, when we were talking about,
extreme motivation.
No, just the timing of not selling out long term, not selling out your long term for the short term. You have to make sure that your goals are reasonable and they have the proper timeline, and that you don't I said I wanted to win this year, so I got to do what I can to win this year, and maybe what it takes is running 100-mile weeks instead of 80-mile weeks, that begets a whole nother set of questions. Are you willing to then eat and sleep and rest everything the way you need to do 100-mile weeks? And mentally, are you ready for what that's going to take? Versus 80-mile weeks is not selling yourself out if you believe 80-mile weeks will get you there at a different time. So,
agreed. Yeah.
It's good chatting about high level stuff today, and or at least touching on it. I don't feel like we got into what drives high level people, or just watch the Jordan documentary and that answers everybody's questions.
Yeah, right.
But next week we'll talk about this will be our final chat about team talks. It'll be about Grant Holloway. Great person. I've known him since his high school days, and really, really cool talking with him.
He was a cool guy for sure. And I'm looking forward to that talk too. So, cool.
Thanks, Jeff, and have a great day. And next week it'll be 85 degrees when we're talking.
Oh, maybe I'll be outside.
All right,
that'll be great. All right,
talk to you later.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.